Today, we actually live in a world where technology is playing an increasing role in almost all aspects of life. And one of the things that differentiates us as humans and keeps the humanness in us when we deal with this world that is full of technology is actually empathy. When you look at this Dilbert cartoon strip on the screen, which is can be seen as a sarcastic or ironic take on lack of empathy in leaders. It's actually frightening to look at the number of leaders who do not use empathy, which I believe is a hidden superpower, to actually lead teams towards higher productivity and towards better business outcomes. So what I want to do today is share my own journey of how, from being a software engineer towards a product leader, empathy has played a key role, and also some of the leadership principles and paradoxes that have helped me also in the work that we're doing at Deutsche Telekom. So if I, rewind to 15 years ago, that is me, Reghu, sitting in a hackathon. So that time I was working at SAP, and this was a hackathon, a worldwide developer event in 2006, where you can see me sitting with a bunch of fellow developers and designers, really focused on writing code, building software, getting excited about technical stuff, learning new programming languages. So this was basically me back then, like a hardcore, nerdy software engineer. And back then, even though I had a lot of good managers that I had worked with, my view of management was quite a bit of these stereotypes of, managers who are standing over your shoulders, trying to micromanage, the ones who play politics all the time. So, management was kind of a very bad thing for me. This is what I had as, something that I would never want to do. I even told my boss, not too long ago, that I would never, ever become a manager. Now, fast forward 15 years, I'm leading the Magenta Voice Assistant product team at Deutsche Telekom. We have been on a very exciting journey of building a voice AI. And as you can see, I actually lead a fairly large product engineering team. In fact, it would be hard to see me in that big picture, which is where there's an icon showing me where I am. How did this transition happen? From someone who was very hands-on, hardcore, nerdy engineer, software engineer, to someone who is leading very large product teams. And this is where I want to talk about those values that have helped me in this whole journey. I grew up in a middle-class family in South India, and my father used to have a moving job. So I used to move every 3 years. So I studied in 12 different schools, throughout my career, throughout my early childhood days. And what you see on screen is actually a Hindu temple. So it's called the Big Temple. So it's a Shiva temple that's not too far from the place that I grew up. It was actually built by the Chola kings in the 10th century. And the most interesting thing about this temple is actually the tomb that you see on the top. So this is a single block of stone weighing 80 tons, standing at a height of 65 meters. Now think of how with primitive construction technologies, they would have managed to do something like this 1,000 years ago. There are a lot of conspiracy theories on how they managed to do it. One say that they built an inclined plane for 11 kilometers and pushed the stone with elephants. There's one which says they built concentric circles and moved the thing up. No matter how they managed to do it, for me, this is a remarkable feat of excellence. Something that stands the test of time. I always think about the own software systems that we build. Are they going to really stand the test of time? But this is what I mean with excellence. So excellence has been a value that's been driving me throughout my childhood and also my career. Here's a personal story. I used to be shit scared of public speaking. Things like what I'm doing today was never the norm when I was growing up, and also when I started my career. This was because as a kid, I used to stammer, and that was a big impediment that I had. And the only way I could get over that was by putting myself into things where I would talk and get over this uncomfortable feeling. So excellence has been something that has been really driving me, throughout my life. So striving for excellence has been one of the most important values. Now, the second thing which has driven me a lot, and here I would like to start again a personal story, is this happened a couple of years ago. I was actually going through my LinkedIn feed and I saw this really great story of how the people at Lego had actually built a fully functional Bugatti Chiron with Lego blocks. And I actually told this to my son, who was 9 years old at that time. I mean, he's crazy about cars and about Lego, so it was a killer combo. So he got curious and he wanted to know what this is all about. And then he figured out that there was a miniature model that he could build. So he even convinced his grandparents to give that as a birthday gift to him. And then, I mean, this is a Lego kit that's for 16 plus year olds. It's got 3,600 pieces with a 600-page manual. It took him 20 hours to build the entire piece. And during that, there was also a phase where he made a mistake. So he had to retrack 100 steps to build it again. But then the joy on his face when he finished that, that was priceless. I mean, this was curiosity at its best, combined with perseverance. And this is another thing that is also something that is very close to me, which is curiosity. I mean, I'm curious by nature, so I spend a lot of time reading stuff and I don't know certain things. As a developer, when there was a bug, I used to debug it until I would find the root cause and then also find the solution. So curiosity is again a value that has been really driving me in this pursuit of excellence. And like I said, combined with perseverance, that's a really killer combo. Now, moving on to the next value, where again, talking about stories, I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of Pixar fans in here. I'm a big time Pixar fan. I really love the way how Pixar combines technical advances in technology with really great emotional storytelling. I mean, who would have imagined of a rat that would cook, or a garbage collecting robot that goes across the universe, finding love, or a old man who uproots his entire home, trying to fulfill his wife's ambition. So, I mean, these are all stories that really stuck with me. And a few years ago, I had the chance to meet Greg Brando, the former CTO of Pixar. And I mean, I asked him this question. I mean, Pixar seems to be a company full of creative people, right? I mean, creative, very smart people. And when you put creative people in a room, I mean, how do they actually collaborate? I was intrigued by this thing of how would you put people in a room, so creative with all big size egos? How do they get to produce such amazing emotional stories? And he said something very profound that has stuck with me ever since. He said, at Pixar, they check their egos out at the door. So whenever they have a meeting or when they're together, they always focus on what is right and not who is right. I mean, this is such a profound thing, where getting off your ego and then really focusing on what is right, goes a far way in producing these really memorable movies that Pixar does. So the villain that we need to fight is not the Lotso bear, which, by the way, as a backstory, has a lot to do with empathy and emotion as to why Lotso became what he became at the end, but really our ego. So ego no go has been something that's been also a value that has helped me, in my journey. So my own personal journey has been characterized by excellence, curiosity, and no ego. And this also helped me move from my own software engineer background into product leader. And by the way, this talk is about leading product teams with empathy. So I would also now talk a bit about the story of what we've been doing with Magenta Voice Assistant and my journey for the last 3 years at Telecom. So for this, I need to go back to early 2019. If you had asked me during that time frame, how did I feel? I mean, I was new at Telecom, so I'd been with the company for 3 years. Before that, I'd spent most of my career working at SAP. It actually felt like jumping out of this plane without no parachutes. And the reason being, we had this passionate team that was working on building a German voice assistant and trying to launch a smart speaker product in the market. So, this started even a few years ago before I joined. So a team was, this was time when neither Alexa nor Google had launched in Germany. So we thought that there was a market. So we were really going after building a smart speaker. But at that time when I joined and I was asked to lead this team to launch the product to the market, it was quite clear that we were very far from that final product that we had to, bring to our customers. Now, this project had a lot of history. As you can see from some of these pictures back then, they were like really passionate and motivated people who were, working really hard to get this product to a state where we can ship it to our customers. And of course, there were lots and lots of pizzas. We had those amazing, times when people would be so motivated just to fix problems and get this out. And we had just been starting to, we had just started doing a customer trial, with the first MVP version of the product. And the feedback was not really great. We had really very low customer satisfaction. People didn't really like the product. This was a running joke, by the way, das habe ich gerade leider nicht verstanden, which means I did not understand you. So this was something the speaker was saying to people, and people really had to scream into the speaker to get something done out of it. And the team was really getting exhausted. They've been bearing very high management expectations, and they're sort of starting to lose the energy and the momentum. And here I was, as a new kid in the block, trying to motivate the team towards the finish line. And going back to that story of leading large teams and that picture that I showed you, I went to the teams, and I remember we had an all hands where I put this up very big and said, keep calm and carry on. I really believe that as a leader, your biggest responsibility is actually to spread calm and motivate people towards continuing to run. And this was a message that was well perceived. There's also this great quote that I like from Bill McDermott, the former CEO of SAP, where he once said, optimism is the only free stimulus in the world. When the mood is positive, anything is possible. So that was the kind of thing that I was trying to get involved into the teams. But this was the easy part. We still had a big technical challenge that we had to face, fix all these challenges that I just said. And we embarked on something which I call as replacing the foundation, to basically rip and replace the entire technical stack that was powering the product. So the telecom smart speaker and all the voice processing components. And this was something comparable to like you have built a house and now you're trying to replace the basement. And it was really difficult, but we figured out that this was the only way to do it. And we were basically, taking a big step. It was a bold one, but a very risky one because it could have failed. But at the end, we did manage to, replace the foundation. We got higher customer satisfaction scores in our customer trials. And then we finally launched the product in September 2019. And from that journey, starting from smart speakers, the Magenta Voice Assistant has actually grown and has now become available on multiple different touchpoints. So we are part of the TV remote controls, from the TV product of telecom, but also embedded into the TV experience, as well as on multiple mobile apps like customer care, smart home. So this journey has been really exciting, and as you can see, it was not easy. It was quite challenging. And I want to now talk about the leadership principles that helped me, get through this really tough journey which we had. And that's something I can really look back at now, say with pride, that it was really worth, and spending all that energy and effort and the passion that we were as a team, doing on Magenta Voice Assistant. Now, the first thing I talked about excellence as my own value, but as a leader, you definitely have to recognize excellence in others, right? With his own story of how passionate and motivated the team was, working towards sometimes seemingly impossible milestones. I had to be there with the team, appreciating what they were doing. And this appreciation can come in different forms. It can be in pre-COVID days, it would be a small pat in the back when you met people face to face. It could be a small email, to an individual or to the entire team, recognizing the work which they've done. So recognizing excellence is actually something really crucial. I mean, especially when you're working on problems which are, let's say, high magnitude topics to fix. And just to be clear, being excellent doesn't mean that you don't fail. I mean, failure and experimentation and learning from mistakes is all part of the journey. And as a leader, you should also be willing to accept that you're going to have failures, you're going to have setbacks, and this is all part of the journey of becoming excellent overall. But again, if this was all easy, everybody would be doing it. Why is it so hard? Because there are also these paradoxes of, when you think of recognizing excellence, when do you focus on the individual identity, meaning individual people, versus when do you focus on the collective identity? So this is something that you need to alternate between. It's not easy, which is why it's all situational, but keep in mind that recognizing excellence also has this paradox attached to it, that sometimes you don't want to put a lot of limelight on individual people, which might then, alienate others within the team. At the same time, you always don't want to put your limelight on the team collectively, because then you have people, and people are passionate about things, and they really appreciate getting individual recognition. So this is a paradox that you need to be aware of on, when to shine light on individual versus the team. The second leadership principle that has also been something that I really follow and is part of the way that I work, is taking genuine care of your team. I mean, especially in these high-profile situations when the pressure is so high, you definitely have to be there with your teams and then taking care of your teams. And again, taking care of your team doesn't mean being nice and being, lax with them. You definitely have to set high, ambitious goals, which would motivate the team. At the same time, when there are setbacks, when there are, so you really need to be there, making sure that, you are taking care of the team. And again, going back to that paradox of what does it mean is, when do you support the team and when do you confront them, right? Support, again, going back to this topic of leading with empathy, you definitely need to be genuinely, showing support for your team and the people who are working in your team. But at the same time, when you see behavior that is not acceptable, you definitely have to confront. So alternating between confrontation and support is actually the paradox that you need to deal with when you really take, genuine care of your team. And the third thing, again, going back to this topic of leading product teams with empathy, is actually, I believe, the most difficult one, is as a leader to show vulnerability. So being vulnerable. Being vulnerable means you need to accept and be open with your teams that you don't have all the answers. For someone like me who's an introvert, asking for help from others doesn't come natural. I mean, I'm used to figuring out things myself or within our team. So we are kind of always working closely. But in our journey of launching the smart speaker, I realized that I had to go out and get support from a lot of other teams. I mean, especially in large organizations, you definitely need the help from others and be open in asking for help. And that means you need to be vulnerable and be open about the challenges that you have, and openly talk about things where you definitely need help. This requires a lot of trust to be built. I mean, I'm also one who believes in trust by default. So building up trust and getting more vulnerable about things and how the challenges are and all the critical things that you're facing goes a long way. One of the things that I also want to share is last year, being part of this whole being vulnerable thing, I also decided to share my 360 feedback with my direct team. So this is one where I had all positives and negatives written about me, and it took a lot of being vulnerable to get over to share this with the team, because being open also then brought back the team that they trusted in me being so open that it also helped me to improve certain things which I want to improve. So this is something which I believe is tough, but it goes a long way in leading product teams with empathy. Again, the paradox here is, when are you patient with the team and when do you accelerate? So the urgency versus patience is something that you need to keep in mind as a leader, and then alternate between the two. So to recap, at least the principles that have helped me, the leadership principles is recognize excellence, take genuine care of a team, and be vulnerable. So with that, and by the way, one more thing, I've talked about and I've recapped a lot of these principles, but for people who come from command and control, micromanaging, and those kind of traditional leadership behavior, there's one thing that I would advise and ask you to take out of this talk, that is letting it go. So, you don't need to know everything. Trust your team and make your team autonomous, empower them, give them all the support, but then get out of their way. There's also, aligns with the agile principles of, removing impediments for the team and then getting out of the way. So if there's one thing that I want you to take out of this talk today, that would be, let it go. Thank you so much.